Good afternoon all, and welcome to the Anti-Money Laundering webinar. My name is Carl Manchip and I am one of the IRIS AML consultants. So, why are we here today? Anti-money laundering. And the problem with anti-money laundering is that the compliance does require a senior management of a practice to take an active role in ensuring compliance with the AML regulations. In extreme cases, failure to comply with this can result in a prison sentence and a potentially unlimited fine. The fourth Anti-Money Laundering Directive was adopted on the 20th of May 2015, and the European Commission, in its action plan against terrorist financing, called upon Member States to bring forward a date for the effective transposition of the directive by the end of 2017. And the UK gave a deadline for this of June the 26th, 2017. The new directive enhances the requirements for risk checks, and it requires documented evidence-based measures for all clients, and this is regardless of the amount of time you've acted for them. Customer due diligence will be required by anyone that's trading goods in a cash with a value of over €10,000, which is down from the current 15,000. And now there is no automatic exemption from enhanced customer due diligence. So previously, firms were able to apply simplified customer due diligence in certain circumstances, for example, a credit or financial institutions which were already subject to requirements of AML. Under the fourth directive, firms are able to use these circumstances as part of justification for simplified due diligence, but only after conducting a risk analysis. However, the exemption is not now automatic. Typically, I have found that more traditional practices blanket check their clients with simplified customer due diligence, and they take a passport and a utility bill at the first meet and mark them as low risk because you've met them. And that's the process of simplified customer due diligence. The decision to apply simplified customer due diligence now will need to be backed up by this documentation. So even though the current UK regulations already incorporate a risk-based approach, the new directive goes even further and seems to require more documentation of this risk assessment. The importance of critical compliance tasks is increasing, and all practices should come prepared for the new legislation ahead. It is a legal requirement to perform this evidence-based customer due diligence and to document the Know Your Client information using approved methodologies. You must identify and document the ultimate beneficial ownerships, and you must complete ongoing due diligence on the business relationship and its transactions undertaken throughout the course of this relationship. From the 15th of March until the 12th of April this year, the Treasury launched a consultation on the transposition of the fourth EU AML Directive. The website displayed on screen links to a document which gives an outline of the responses submitted and the government's policy decisions. It's accompanied by draft regulations. Now, essentially, the biggest change here is the government's plans to create the Office of Professional Body AML Supervision, or the OPBAS. And this will be under the umbrella of the Financial Conduct Authority, and their job will be to enforce the new regulations of the fourth EU Directive. The OPBAS will be open for business at the start of 2018. It's already been explained that the OPBAS will strengthen and coordinate the current inconsistent approach to money laundering regulations compliance, and the Treasury expect the Supervisory Board to stop £24 billion lost to serious and organised crime each year through these inconsistencies. They will be funded by an FRC levy on professional bodies, and so, as a practice, typically you will have been assessed by your governing body, the AAT, the ICAW. Because each of these took a different approach, and because they are naturally lenient on the practices they govern, the OPBAS have been introduced. The OPBAS are independent and they have no invested interest in your practice. So it's now more important than ever to recognise the scale and severity of the AML changes that are coming. We are in the last 2 weeks of a 2-year implementation scheme, and we are running out of time. It's a requirement to be compliant with the new evidence-based risk assessments by June the 26th, 2017, with the enhanced supervision starting just a few months afterwards. So, what does this mean to you? During June 2016, 200 people responsible for managing client risk and fraud protection in accountancy practices completed an online survey. These next 5 questions are the results as analysed by Loudhouse, a specialist research division of Octopus Group, and they're in relation to practices undertaking the new standards. On average, companies felt it necessary to spend up to 9 hours screening new clients, and 90% believe that this process is adding significant time and cost to their business. A majority of respondents feel that the biggest challenges coming in the next 12 months are adapting to new threats and fraud and protecting themselves against cyber threats, as well as keeping up to date with the changing AML legislation, of course the deadline of which is June the 26th. Almost 60% of respondents feel that they are failing to carry out sufficient due diligence on a client. And this is something I encounter personally very often. Common reasons include not wanting to damage a long-standing professional relationship requirement and not feeling a requirement due to having met the client in a personal capacity. And it's really important to remember that a documented evidence-based risk assessment must be completed for every client you work on behalf of. Your account managers for the AML system are all very friendly and they're very experienced in these conversations. They're quite happy to have the conversation with you on how best to approach clients that might be more sensitive to this request. Here we can see that the most important factors are also the most time-consuming. We can understand that the general census is time is a necessary evil undertaken in order to effectively onboard a client. And 69% of practices believe it's difficult to capture all of the information they need to fully understand their clients. And for you, it's important to remember that with the new risk-based measures, a passport and utility bill is not always sufficient. So we'll cover more on this automated risk assessment tying into the simplified customer due diligence and its required supporting evidence. We'll cover that in this demonstration in a bit. So let's take a look at the software. The IRIS anti-money laundering solution is a fully automated, audit trackable system that allows you to deal with all aspects of AML compliance, and this includes those automated risk assessments. On opening the application, you'll see a full list of all of your companies, and as well as the company name, you can also see important information for the business, such as the risk profile, the entity type, and the registered company name. We can also see, most importantly, the entity's compliance status, and you don't want your practice statuses looking as bad as mine. Mine is just demo data. On the left-hand side, we can see the Actions pane, and this gives you access to features such as outstanding suspicions on clients, the newswires and training facilities, and the ability to check for program updates. Some of these features are only available at regulations officers level, and tabs such as outstanding suspicions will show only the logged-in users' data, but I'll come back to this later on in the demonstration. Below this pane, you can see a key which shows us the status of each company, and we can see that these red crosses mean that action is required. Our company records can be created manually, or they can be quickly imported from Companies House using the company's reference number. So let's do this now. We can click the New button and we just have to select the client entity type. And in our case, it is a listed company. Now we're asked if we like to import the basic details from Companies House. We'll select Yes and click Next, and it will ask us for a registration number. So in this case, I will use Iris's. Now we're notified of the download that's due to occur, and we click Next, And we can now see that Companies House has pulled in all of the static details. It will ask us to save the client record, and we will do that now. For those accountants that are currently using PTP's PC Share Register product, you can import your existing data into the AML system nice and quickly. Your account manager can help you with this. Equally, for IRIS users, your practice management system can be used to populate the anti-money laundering system. And for all other softwares, you can import via CSV. For those of you that will be implementing this software for the first time at any point this week, I'm hosting a separate webinar on Friday afternoon where we'll go into depth on how to do this and how to automail all of your clients to get the Know Your Client questions that we'll see in a bit, and that will happen on Friday afternoon. Now, as you can see, along the top of the client record, we've got a number of tabs that deal with every aspect of AML compliance for this company. By default, the window opens in the General tab, which includes static information such as name, registered addresses, risk profile, and client review dates. On the right-hand side, we can see compliance status with corresponding red crosses indicating non-compliance. And at the bottom of the window, we can see that the risk profile is also incomplete. By double-clicking the corresponding titles, we can jump into the areas that require attention. So let us start by defining the company's risk profile. Our entity type has actually been pre-populated using our existing data, so we can just go ahead and click Define. Here, you're offered the option to manually create a risk assessment, but when using this method, you must attach supporting evidence as to why the risk sits as it does. But in this example, we'll follow the wizard's guide through to receive our automated risk assessment. So, we can confirm that the entity exists as a business, and they are not listed as one of the following. They do not have an unusually complex business structure, and our business is not owned or operated for the benefit of a politically exposed person. The company does not have any outside links with countries with weak money laundering regimes, and there are no other risks that we know of. We have actually met these individuals, however, they are not a member of a professional body. So here we can see that in actual fact we've automated what would otherwise have been a time-consuming manual task of researching using the approved paper methodologies, and we have simplified this in just a matter of moments. So we will click OK, and we can see that the risk profile has now been marked as normal, and we will now enter the review date for the client. So in this case, we can click 2 years, but if we wish to tab out of it before clicking OK, it will remind us that we do need to complete the last review completed. So this enables you and your staff to make sure that by the time you've got that first green compliant tick, you can be absolutely sure that you've done absolutely everything you need to do. This will now set an automatic reminder for us for when the client next needs to be reviewed, so it saves you and your staff time from unnecessarily rechecking records. So as I say, now we've got our review date and our first green tick towards a fully compliant client, we can use this as a workflow and work upwards. So we will click the Know Your Client questions, and we're automatically taken into that tab. So here we can see set questions adhering to the anti-money laundering legislation. These questions are dynamic and they will change depending on your client's entity type and risk profile. If you've been using the paper manuals, some of these questions may seem similar. Now our first question, the trading name, is not different from the client, so we will answer this as answer not applicable. It will automatically mark the answer as satisfactory, and we can click on next. For date the business started, we will type in the date that they started, and we have to manually mark this answer as satisfactory to move on to the next question. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I will mark through the next questions so that we can get our next compliance tick. The answer satisfactory tab can be selected to automatically check as OK, and this can be done using the settings button. So once we've completed these and got our green ticks, clicked OK, we can actually see that we've got our second green tick towards compliance. It is a requirement that supporting ID is attached to each client record. So if we click Client ID, we are taken into the Client ID tab. This screen is dynamic and it updates according to the previous answers to the Know Your Client questions and to the risk assessment. So we can see here that a passport and utility bill isn't always enough. The system allows us to connect to Companies House for free to complete one of the required forms of ID, but due to our current risk profile, we can't see that option. So let's connect to a different risk profile to view this. We can go into Fee for UK, and we can see here that a free Companies House search or other confirmation is available, and we can also see that the requirements for the different type of ID highlight the importance of maintaining an accurate risk profile. Again, in our case, this took minutes rather than the hours spent manually searching. So we can start the check by clicking Free Companies House Search. We'll click New, Free Companies House Data Check. Here we can see that all of the information has automatically been pulled in from Companies House, and we can see it all here on screen. When we close the record down, it will automatically attach it to our record, and it will automatically populate the description for us. Again, it's a requirement that we enter the expiration date, so if we forget that, we can click OK, and it will just remind us to check for us. We can select 24, and because we also forgot to mark evidence as satisfactory, we're reminded of that as well. So here we can see that the ID required for client has now actually moved into the ID Obtained tab, and we are one step closer to working through the sections. It is important that once you've started on one section, you follow through the whole way. You cannot pick and change from different sections, as that will not ensure compliance. So let's go back to Iris Group, and we will work through the client ID that's required. It's a requirement that we attach a confirmation of the company listing. So let's double check and open this. On the left-hand side, we can see the guidance notes, but by clicking New, we're able to scan or attach any existing documentation. So once we've attached that, we can click OK, and we mark in the description, confirmation of listing, evidence attached, and we will choose the expiry date for 2 years' time. We can click OK, and when we're confident with its completion, we'll mark evidence as satisfactory and close it down. And here we can see, again, it's moved into the ID obtained. You can also do a sanctions check, whereby you will connect to Companies House, and you have the option to do this manually, in which case you will have to manually review the results and record your own conclusions in the software, or you can download free of charge the consolidated list of financial sanctions target in the UK, and it will automatically check its content for you. Now, our fourth and final section is the associated persons. So this warning message tells us that we currently have no known persons. So we will close this and we'll create a new association by clicking New. Here we're presented with a database of all of our individuals, and because it's relational, it updates all records associated with the individual when these changes are made. And this is particularly useful for when you're working for directors of multiple companies. So let's search down here, and we will click to open Emily Grant's tab. Now, because we already have her ID, we can see on the side here, all we need to do is enter the position that she's taken on and the date that she became this position. So we'll click OK, and that's all we need to do. We've got a green tick against Emily Grant in the record. This can be repeated as many times as needed to add all of the associated peoples. Now, it's important to note that different ID requirements are needed for different risk level individuals, and we do do have the ability to complete an electronic check for the individual in place of supporting evidence. I always advise that these electronic ID checks should be saved as a last resort, and if you do possess the government photoed ID and perform a free sanctions check, we can do that automatically as before for free. But let me just show you how that electronic check works. We will pop into high risk Adam, and we will go for client ID for this record. And here we have the ability to perform an electronic check in conjunction with GB Group. So when we open the electronic check, we can see the standard databases that are always checked and the individual costs of these calls. So it will check for call ID, the mortality halo register, births index, Royal Mail redirect, landline telephone, electricity supply, sanctions and enforcements, and politically exposed persons. For an extra 50p, you can also connect to see if the person has a UK bank account, a UK driver's licence, an international passport, and their national insurance number. This seems very much worth it, so we will do this for now. We will click Perform Check, and we'll ask for our customer reference number for the account that we've set up, the billing office, and then we check Confirm to confirm that we have read the warnings. We will click Perform Check, and now we're communicating with GB Group. Now, it's now returning us results from live databases, and these live databases are useful in that they guarantee your compliance. There are other electronic checks on the market that perform they do a data scrape, so automatically all of their data is going to be 1 or 2 days out, depending on when they last checked. We can see that because High Risk Adam is a made-up profile, we have got an awful lot of information and rechecks needed, and a lot of could not validates. For quick reference, the outcome here shows that we need to actually refer back for more investigation. When we close this one down once more, as before, it will assign it to the record, it will take the date that we've checked, the outcome of this, we enter the expiry date, mark the evidence as satisfactory, and check again when needed. Once we've completed this, we would have a fully completed record, and we can be sure that we have been able to complete our customer due diligence, and we can forget about these clients until the record pops up and tells us that we need to recheck them again. Now, if we complete personal tax returns for an individual such as Emily, we must add them as an entity on the main screen, and we run this risk profile just as before, but in this case we select individual as opposed to any of the others. SWAT UK have provided all of their paper manuals electronically, so we can view these by clicking the expert guidance, and we can see that we're provided with a wealth of information provided by SWAT UK that we can actually drill down into, such as what is money laundering and how do you tip off and prejudice an investigation. It's a requirement that you, as the Money Laundering Regulations Officer, ensure that all staff members are trained and up to date in respect of the current legislation and document the evidence of this training. So the Iris Anti-Money Laundering solution does contain optional newswires and training modules, and these are located on the left-hand side of the main screen in the Actions panel. So if we open these, we can actually see recently downloaded newswires. And we can see that we're presented with 6 true-to-life scenarios, and it looks like here we go. We can presented with 6 true-to-life scenarios and questions that enable your staff to remain up to date in respect to the current legislation. When we move on to another, we are normally asked if we wish to mark the newswire as read. We can click yes, and this shows us exactly who has read the newswires and who is yet to read them and maybe needs a little reminder. At the bottom of the screen, we do have the option to switch from newswires to training, and the training is electronic and delivered in bite-sized segments that last no longer than 1 minute or 2 minutes each. We can come to these as and when we have the time. They are delivered as a slideshow, and it does have sound. Once we've completed this training, we are able to test ourselves, and we do this by navigating to test. Here, we are presented with multiple choice questions, and the pass mark is usually 8 out of 10. You can resit these tests if you do fail these tests, and the results are passed across to the Money Laundering Regulations Officer once more so that you can be sure exactly who is up to date and who might need a little bit of extra training. As Money Laundering Regulations Officer for the practice, there are tabs available only to us, and these again are located in the Actions pane. So if we view suspicions, we can see suspicions that have been raised by a staff member. Now, whilst we can see everyone's, staff members can only see their own, and by opening the document, I can see that staff member Mark has raised a suspicion and why he has raised a suspicion. If we click the Money Laundering Regulations Actions tab, we have the ability to report these suspicions to the National Crime Agency, or we have the ability to close these down and marked as resolved and the reasons as to why we have. As a practice, you do need to have your own policies and procedures in place and documented, and you can open these by clicking the View Firm's Policies and Procedures place, and for the most part it will be auto-populated for you, but you do have to fill in the 4 main risks of your firm's anti-money laundering. So that is the IRIS anti-money laundering solution, and by now you will see that it's a complete end-to-end solution documenting the evidence-based risk assessment, not just the result of an electronic ID check. So, to recap, the software will connect to Companies House and it will provide you a free search confirming the name and address of the company where possible, and it will enable you to attach existing files and paper documents that you may already have. It will help you track your staff in training and flag up any deficiencies, and you can automatically connect to your existing databases to pre-populate the required static data. The newswires automatically download each month, and they do contain 6 true-to-life questions and answers based on realistic scenarios. You, as the Money Laundering Regulations Officer, can see which staff member has and hasn't viewed them and ask them to log which newswires have been read. The training, once again provided by SWAT UK, is there to ensure that your staff members remain relevant and up to date with compliance. The scored pass testing is normally 8 out of 10, but you are able to resit these should you fail the first time. The Money Laundering Regulations Officer can also record other training events, such as actual seminars that may have been attended. All of the training does count towards your CPD requirements and does get logged. The pricing is based upon the number of clients who go into the system, and you do have the option to add on this newswires and training if you feel it beneficial. A client is classed as a company or an individual you work on behalf of. For example, if you work on behalf of Smiths Limited and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that is 3 entities within the system. Entry level is 30 clients and it's priced at £165 plus VAT for the year, including full support, but this does get cheaper on a per client basis as your levels increase. The monthly newswires start between 1 and 10 staff, priced at £140, the training between 1 and 10 staff for £275. The ID checks are billed for separately and they are paid individually £3, £3.50 per check, not necessarily a requirement, but billed on account to be paid at the end of each month. So, thank you for your time. Due to the high amount of people that we've got on the webinar today, I will be taking a few questions, but those that I don't get answered, please do email me. My email's there. I will send back a consolidated list of all the answers. Also, you can connect to your account managers using the number there. They're all available and ready and waiting for you now. But yes, for now, let's take just a few questions to clarify anything that may not have been clear. Hello. Yes, the software. Oh, sorry. The question is, hi. Do I need to purchase this from Iris? I'm using the Iris accounting software for 12 years. Yes, this is a separate software to your tax and account suite. It does need to run alongside them, and yes, you will need to purchase it from Iris. The software itself is not linked directly to the Iris database, and that is due to Iris having only acquired the software recently. However, you can import using your practice management system via CSV or Excel file. The software is intelligent enough that it understands who has already been imported and who needs to be imported. Your individuals as well as your entities can be populated from any software that enables you to export into CSV file. As I say, on Friday, for those of you that are implementing the system for the first time, on Friday afternoon I will be running another webinar, in which case we'll go through 30 minutes, we'll show you exactly what files are needed, how to import, and also how to automatically mail all of your clients that are required for these Know Your Client questions and the letter format that you can pop out. So this question is, you mentioned that for low-risk clients, passport copy and utility bill might not be enough. Can you please advise where I find more details on this? This is a question that I'm asked all of the time. The software is designed to give you this information. This information is not something you can search and find. It's something that you can only find through a manual research process. The two options at the moment are you can get the manuals, and you can use that process of research, and for each of your clients you can go through the same questions that we've automated here, and you can research as to what risk level they sit in. This software is designed so that you don't have to go through that process, so that you don't have to spend up to 9 hours researching each of your clients. This software does it automatically for you. Wherever it can automate a process, it will automate a process. If the software doesn't automate it, you are required to have done it yourself as part of the legislation. Okay, and what I will do is leave that there. There are a few other questions that are coming through to me. Please do send it via email. I will be sending back a consolidated list of all of the answers to everyone that sends in requesting one. Thank you very much for your time today, and have a good day.